Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is a heavyweight news mashup, sort of catch-up news and notes, a bit of everything rumbled into one, so I have taken a week off, was feeling a bit burned out, just needed a bit of time to just rest, recover, while also working full-time. So the last week, there's been a few bits and pieces going on, so that's what we're cracking into. So some of it may have a little bit of moss on it, but I still wanted to comment. Starting with the Derek Chisora Joseph Parker press conference, which is ahead of their rematch on the 11th of December, or should I say 18 December. And they've had a midweek press conference. Gotta say, it sort of lacked a little something. Wasn't a whole lot of energy. I mean, Derek Chisora was throwing out a few decent one-liners, but in the same breath, he wasn't sure who was on the undercard, even though two of them trained with him. But just not a lot of energy. Both sort of saying they'll be better, they want to take each other out, all the regular sorts of things. And maybe Derek Chisora summed it up best when he said that he was half excited, but half not. And I think for me, I'm sort of feeling the same way about this fight, because the rematch, it was, I guess, kind of needed, but also I could have, easily gone without it as well. It was initially a fight that we didn't necessarily need to have. I think people were hoping Joseph Parker would, take a step beyond Derek Chisora, but then Derek Chisora ended up being pretty much all he could handle, and arguably a lot of people thought that Parker lost. Very close fight. A lot of people have it different ways. And Derek Chisora in the press conference said, look, you need to get me an American referee. You need to get me some better judges, pay some judges. I need a fair scoring system, fair scorecards. I don't want to keep getting robbed. Eddie Hearn, please do this. But in terms of Joseph Parker, his trainer, Andy Lee, sort of said, look, we've had a full camp. First time around, it was, 5 weeks working together. Couldn't really do too much. And I think people sort of expected the longer they're working together, the more sort of that Kronk style that Andy Lee sort of touches we'll see in Joseph Parker. Ahead of this fight, Joseph Parker sort of said, look, I need a good performance. I need to go in, look good, perform well. Otherwise, what's the point? So it kind of feels like Parker's been promising this sort of thing for years now, since he registered a couple of losses to Anthony Joshua and also Dillian Whyte. A slew of tune-ups, and then Junior Far fight, also Derek Chisora, just not quite performing to the level that people thought he could perform at. And obviously there's a question about, can he develop, a bit more power? Because certainly there is the question about how, what he can do at world level in terms of his power. No real stoppages of note in recent years at the top level. I don't mean blasting journeyman out, but even Alex Leopai and some other guys have gone rounds with Joseph Parker where others have blasted, some of these sort of guys out earlier, in fights that they've had. But it'll be interesting to see. Can he, change a few things in this rematch? Can he take Derek Chisora out? Or is Chisora, who started strong and faded badly in that first fight, is he going to have it all over Joseph Parker? Is he going to be able to, not just have 6 good rounds and then basically fade badly? There were stretches late in the fight where Chisora was still landing punches, and obviously the body work really took it out of Joseph Parker, who at one point where he had Derek Chisora hurt basically let him off the hook. So can he show a killer instinct? Can Derek Chisora take things further? There is some interesting questions, but I'm not all the way in excited or anything like that. But this is the last major fight in the heavyweight division, so I'm looking forward to it, but like Derek Chisora says, kind of half excited, half not. Moving on, so you've got Demsey Mckean. So it was announced that he's signed a multi-fight promotional deal with Matchroom. Just getting here to the press release, so he says, I'm delighted on my recent signing and to join Matchroom boxing team and get back in the ring next week. I've had a brilliant time over the last few months sparring with Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte, but now it's time to do it for real, and I can't wait to fight in America. So he has been announced as returning, and this is going to be on the 19th of November on the Jason Quigley and Demetrius Andrade card, but no opponent at the moment, TBA, so it's going to be a tune-up and then obviously on to something bigger and better, you would hope. But I guess for him, it makes sense. when he was in Australia, he'd become pretty much the biggest fish in the pond, so to speak. Lucas Browne wouldn't fight him, had agreed at one point, pulled out. So there was the question, what's really left for him in Australia? He's not going to get the big names that he needs to fight in Australia. He needed to go elsewhere. So this is part of that. He's now living in the UK for a period. He's going to be having this first fight under Matchroom, hopefully onto something bigger and better. And I know that there has been rumour and mention before of maybe Mckean could face a guy like Filip Hrgovic, even other names like Zhang Zhilei. So, for example, just moving on to Zhang, so he has been announced to return November 27. He'll be on the Teofimo Lopez and also George Kambosos undercard. This is the event that originally Triller had. They defaulted. It's gone to Matchroom. It's at the Hulu Theatre. Zhang is going to be facing, and I've never heard of this guy before, so I have to bring it up, Bernardo Marquez, a record of 14-4-1. And when you look at his resume, so he's 28 years old, he's from the United States, 6'2", that record 14-4-1. Really, there's not much on the record. So he has been pretty much exclusively been fighting in the United States and also Mexico. And there's a slew of just journeyman names on the record. So this feels like basically a tune-up and nothing more for Zhang, who is coming off that really sort of back and forth, it sort of switched a real tale of two halves fight against Jerry Forrest. And if you don't remember that, you should go back and watch, because he knocked Forrest down in each of the first 3 rounds and then faded badly. Escaped with a draw in the end and ended up going to hospital, and there was all sorts of bits and pieces apparently wrong that they haven't quite fully disclosed, but apparently back to full health. So he was meant to be in the previous iteration of Lopez and Kambosos, and the opponent for that fight was going to be Daniel Martz, but for whatever reason Martz either not available or didn't accept the fight for whatever reason, and he's facing Bernardo Marquez. So a tune-up and nothing more. And seemingly, Sergey Kuzmin, he was meant to be fighting at the start of November against Kevin Johnson. It got scrapped. I'm not sure of all the details. He is going to be facing a new opponent, and this is on the 26th of November. And I'll just have to bring up the name here. Igor, Adiel, Macedo, de Silva. I probably butchered that. A 29-year-old who's fought exclusively in Brazil. So this shapes as another tune-up against a guy with a massively padded record. Yeah, not good. We don't know much about this guy, but it's probably a lamb to the slaughter stuff. Moving on, Kash Ali. He is going to be returning in December, 17th of December. This is going to be in Ponds Forge Arena in Sheffield. So he says, season's beatings. Will be defending my IBF European title 5 weeks today. Great evening with some top talent and titles on the show, live on fightzone.uk. Tickets, yada, yada, yada. So 5 weeks to go, and this was just a day ago that it was posted, but let's face it, no opponent announced. It's not going to be anyone good. Let's face it, they're going to bring out some European guy who's probably got a record, let's call it now, something like 11-3, somewhere there or thereabouts, and it's going to be an overmatched opponent who ends up getting stopped. There is a question, what is Kash Ali going to do? Because you can only take so many of these weak defenses on Fight Zone. He is kind of one of their bigger marquee names for Fight Zone, but is his career really doing much right now? This is he might be working on some stuff, getting a little bit better, trying to make a position himself for another sort of run at a heavyweight title, or towards something, building towards a title shot eventually. But at the moment, you got to sort of start fighting some better names, better guys that will test you. I don't think at 5 weeks' notice we're going to see anything good here. But yeah, Kash Ali has been improving, but needs to be in with better names as well. So that's the other side of that coin. Moving on, the Australian prospect Teremoana Jr. is set to return versus Hunter Sam. And this is going to be on the Lucas Browne card on December the 3rd, where he faces Whainga Opilu. So Teremoana Jr. versus Hunter Sam. Sam, ex-Australian heavyweight champ, but we're talking about years removed from anything resembling his prime. So once a decent and sort of durable heavyweight, but now he's been taking just L after L. Hasn't had a win since 2014. There is a draw sort of mixed in there, but just L after L if you go check out his record on BoxRec. So Teremoana Jr., who's 6'6", you've got Hunter Sam, who's basically 6 foot. Teremoana Jr., good height, good speed, good jab. He should take care of Hunter Sam here, either by stoppage or he'll get a unanimous decision. I think you can almost take that to the bank. A guy who's been padding out his record for years, Marcin Siwy, so he is going to be facing Marcelo Nascimento the 21st of November, and this is in Poland. And you have to ask yourself, what is Marcin Siwy really doing? So 30 years old, not really in any rankings, has had really no fights of note, and we've certainly been talking about the step up for this guy has been needed for a couple of years. But yeah, we will see what happens after this, because if I do a new pretender or contender list for 2022, he would be a lock, because at what point do you actually step up and go, okay, let's test myself? Because we certainly haven't seen it. And Nascimento, he hasn't had a win since 2017, so he's 6 losses on the bounce here. And just a couple of things before we go. So this is starting to gather a little bit of moss, you can see, from the 7th of November. So I'd done a video, I think, Friday last week or whatever, and then this came out the following day. There was some talk that Bakole had agreed to fight Tony Yoka, but for whatever reason, Yoka seemingly has decided to go in another direction, at least according to Team Bakole. So I guess what's going to happen with Martin Bakole, because he had the opportunity to fight Filip Hrgović, an IBF final eliminator. He turned that down, said he needed a warm-up, and then was talking about fighting Tony Yoka. So is this to confirm that Martin Bakole totally ducked Filip Hrgović, wanted some work elsewhere, and now he's saying that Yoka has ducked him? So Yoka has said on social media his next fight January 15th. At this point, I haven't seen an opponent, but hopefully one comes out soon. And then just finishing, so, you know, Christopher Lovejoy, as you follow this channel, you know he's a bit of an oddity in the heavyweight division. He's built his name on social media, and he is a character. But he's managing this guy, DeAndre Savage, and there was a post that Savage had sort of put up saying that he's coming, you know, for up and coming, and he's wants to fight Johnny Fisher and all this sort of stuff. And he was using the well-trodden Christopher Lovejoy sort of call-out tactics, which I basically said he's using them, and I said the only thing missing is Sam Jones, who obviously used to manage the likes of Joe Joyce, Johnny Fisher, Solomon Dakers, until his recent move to Probellum. But Sam Jones would always come back with some cutting response, and I said that's the only thing that's missing. So who drops into the comments? Sam Jones. If Lovejoy wants to keep his Savage in one piece, he needs to stay well away from the Romford Bull. And based on what I've seen of both, I think Johnny Fisher would be a freight train, and certainly he would take care of DeAndre Savage. But gotta love the hustle from Savage, but I think at this point you gotta put it in a bit more work to give us some confidence you could beat someone like Johnny Fisher. But anyway, what do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.